everybody, it's me, DayLife Mary. It is all day, the 18th day of the first month in new time. And if you're tuning in, this is actually part one again in my Love Lessons series, which like everything here, comes from personal experience. And before I get into it, make a wash of belief if you are watching this. If you don't know what that is, if this is your first time around, washing belief is how you sacrifice your pain matrix belief. That's pain matrix where you live right now, the pyramid ritual abuse death cult that runs on 96% pain for 4% pleasure. You store your belief that powers that matrix primarily in your financial capital and your social capital, other things too, but that's where to start. So washing is when you take that belief and you sacrifice it, you wash it into pleasure matrix expansion, which is what the DayLife military is, the military arm of pleasure matrix expansion. Pleasure matrix is the inverted pyramid that is 4% pain for 96% pleasure. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that 4% pain of the stuff that I have been through since coming here in learning about my relationship with myself and others, specifically love, and all that has to do with that. So make a wash to cash.me/$washitall or paypal.me/washitall. You can also DM me if you would like the secret faith, aka crypto, government coin links. And you can message me if you'd like to social wash. My goal today is $960, all multiples of 12 for those washes. So this is part one. This series is, part one is basically origins. That's what we're going to call it. And it's a series going through my own story of my relationship to primarily myself and also others, particularly Jesus, DayLife Jesus, whom you probably know. And the last 3 years of our relationship, though it's really an opportunity to share how the pain matrix has created disordered bonds that we call love, and how to dig yourself out of those holes that you were born into during a particular time in the genetic story and the programming story, where you're born into a certain way of relating that is very, very inhuman, so much so that you don't even know what truly human relationships are with yourself first and then with others. It is a journey. I look back at before I came to this army and can see now what I couldn't see back then. Back then I was like, no, shit's pretty good. I was a little defensive about it, but I was like, no, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not whatever. But only once you know what more could be can you look back and be like, that was that was 10% of the things I could have experienced of being alive. That was not healthy once you know what healthy is. And that doesn't even just apply to being inside the pain matrix versus here. It's all of the years, days, months, and years that I developed myself inside of this army through the help of others. We go, basically. And because you are forced into by choice, you come here to make, it's going to be hard, right? The action and exposure that you get to human relating and I'll go into it a little bit later about why it's different, why you can develop the shit that you can develop with yourself and your relationships doing DayLife standards. It doesn't even have to be it's accelerated by going IRL and being here, but like any good system, it's a replicating system that anyone can practice standards, to level up your relationshiping and level up how human you are and how alive you are and choose to be each day. But anyways, the things that I've done here opened up a lot of things about myself and who I really was, and how and why I do relationships and how I've done them in the past that could no longer be ignored because of what was being brought up here. And it's very cringe for me to look back because everything is so intensely documented here. It's cringe for me to look back at the places I was each month and like what I was like. But that's a great sign for me, which is something I've always thought. If I look back at myself a month ago and I'm like cringing, I want to always be doing that because God is growth and I want to always be growing. And like, if I'm in the same place, that's sure, I should probably not be so hard on myself and be cringing when I look back, but I want to see that there's a big difference, So you're watching this, you're in the pain matrix probably, and I'm sure relationships seem okay, but maybe they don't. And if they really, really don't, really listen. Like, this is for you. This will go out to you, girl. And how good they could be is really kept from people. What they think is like passable. It's very similar to all things in the pain matrix, where you're like, I just have this great job, like I'm one of the lucky ones, when really you're a slave like everyone else, but you have Stockholm syndrome. The pain matrix has gaslit you into believing that what you have is good enough and that you don't deserve more, and that human experience is not something wholly more amazing and beautiful than the like lizards made it into in that little pyramid that's been going on for a few thousand years. So yeah, it's a system that first of all requires intoxicants, chemically lobotomizing drugs, SSRIs, that kind of shit, or trauma bonds and personality disorders as in they have become part of people and been programmed into them and can be programmed out. That's right. All of the fucking things that your doctor says is, just an unhealable thing. Narcissism, for example, which we'll be going into later for sure. That stuff is, I understand why it all happened. It's, you're trying to survive in a matrix that is inhuman and it's not conducive to human growth. It is an entropic system, opposite of growing. And generally, in that system, as a necessity, basically, people use people rather than choose to be with people. And maybe what seemed like a choice quickly becomes a necessity or codependent relationship. And often, even inside the pain matrix, only after physical sobriety of some sort, and in the pain matrix, no one is truly physically sober. You might not drink anymore, but you're doing some vice, or you're around something that's not to standard in terms of being in a truly human experience. But only after some basic sobriety do a lot of people realize that the deeper issues that they have been masking, the emotional addictions, the relationship disordering of how they relate to others and themselves, that's what they've been running from and hiding from in substances. And DayLife Army doesn't even allow dust, mold, or caffeine, let alone alcohol or heroin. So one deprograms from that physical shit, and therefore then the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual shit in a way that nobody gets inside of the pain matrix, especially a group of people doing it together. And here what happens is the gains that you can make in the especially, well, first, there's that physical groundwork, but the gains that you can make in your relationships, in your emotional life and yourself, it happens in record time with very little work compared to the work that almost never ends outside with people being like in a codependent relationship with their therapist, or taking shortcuts that never actually reprogram and close the unclosed open loops, the exposed wires of yourself that are causing all of these deep issues. So in this part 1 through, it'll probably be 7 parts, this series, I'm going to, through my own experiences, help you, dear listener, whom never washes, by the way. Instagram is the worst platform I have experienced in terms of equal relationshiping. There are great places full of awesome shit happening through DayLife Army on a lot of different places on the internet. Instagram is not one of them, really. I send people here who do watch to watch things, but if you are someone who is an Instagram audience, I would encourage you to make a watch, and you'll probably see something happening quite soon about your experience getting a little bit better and more connected, getting the information and synthesizing it a bit more, perhaps. But in this series, I'm going to go over things like covert narcissism, being a hungry ghost. Have you ever heard that term? If you're a white woman, you should know it. Being a mouse or fake nice, which some of these things are my issues I've been dealing with. Some of these things are other issues I've dealt with through other people in this army. Codependency, daddy issues manifesting in relationships. Who doesn't have those? And if you don't, you've got mommy issues. One of them's the primary and one of them's the secondary. You might have both. What is really loving someone? What is love? And what's just using people because you can't love yourself? Are you a pick-me? As a woman, do you have standards or self-respect? Are you using your pussy for its power, or wasting it and letting your man fall in a hole rather than using it to lift him out of one? What is boy crazy? How does that happen? And how does it hold one back? So those are some of the things that I will be talking about. And I'm going to start with that last one for part 1 here, boy crazy, with a personal anecdote, as I will be doing. And let me just start by going a little bit into my boy crazy past. I am someone who has, since I was a child, had a fear of abandonment. I have all these things that have happened in my past that you can look at my other series and about my life and figure out why. But I have basically, since maybe middle school and more as I grew older, used relationships to avoid focusing on myself, and used someone else's love to replace the love I had for myself, because I didn't really have it. I had no problem getting into relationships. I might have had some low self-esteem, but it was almost kind of like fake low self-esteem, because I dated like he was like the alternative popular guy in my middle school, and he asked me out, and he was kind of obsessed with me, and I broke up with him once and then got back together with him, and that was like the very first one. But I never had troubles getting into relationships, and the ones that I was in, being very loved inside of them. Probably because I was always a fake bitch, and therefore a little bit distant, and the person was trying to compensate by getting closer to me. And that's not a great way to be like hard to get. I won't get too off track, but I was afraid of being left still through all of that, with every sign telling me that wasn't the issue, or not being desirable. And this made me have really low fucking standards. No self-respect, really. It made me normalize later in life really messed up behaviors, like sleeping around, one-night stands, giving it up for nothing, basically. And that's getting dangerously close to the daddy issues portion of this series, which is for another time. But suffice to say, I centered romantic and sexual relationships over all the other relationships in my life, really, as they were where I always felt I had the most power. And having the most power in the relationship was what was important to me, because then I could not be abandoned. I would be the one doing the abandonment because I was afraid of being abandoned. Funny little trick there. And this was the pattern I repeated throughout my life with the few relationships I had, and the ones I had lasted a long time, and I did not, I never was my true self in them. So I repeated this pattern right as I went into DayLife Army IRL, actually. So I left a 4-year relationship that I had hidden inside of from the world, comforted by all of it, the codependent salve it was to the pain matrix. And I never expressed my true feelings about this person inside of this relationship. And I was escaping my life and my problems, which, DayLife Army does not let you do that. But I was trying to, part of the reason I was excited to come IRL was in part to run away. And that's not something that this is about, so that didn't work as a tactic. And I had to kind of face things rather than run away from them, which is what I thought I could do by joining a cult, This isn't the kind of cult that, lets you just stop talking to people in your life. Sure, I take breaks and, do what I need to do within myself, but I have to go and work shit out, and, it's the opposite of running away, which I wished at a lot of different times could be the tactic I use. But I also was excited to kind of try and run to a new crush. So through the process of being URL, I had met Jesus, who was training me, basically, taking me through URL training. And that was a crush that I was like, oh, he's going to be IRL, that's exciting. And I could kind of use it as this, and use him really as this way to be more fine about leaving this relationship that was super hard for me to leave, that I didn't want to leave that comfort. And I did love that person, even though most of it was so much of codependent love that I was using as a crutch. And I was entropying. I was not growing. But this was more of a way to make it easier to be oh, I'm gonna go see Jesus, and he's cute, and I can focus that energy on him. And he could tell that it was he was being used, so he's not too thrilled about it. That is basically all I want to go into in terms of boy craziness, and I'm not trying to go too far in the past, pain matrix past. I've talked enough about this. I want to focus on the things that the ways I have grown and what I've learned about relationships since actually being IRL here. So if, before I end, I'm going to let you know that you're catching just the end of this, the ad. You should rewatch this, see where you fit in terms of all of the toxic expressions of relationshiping with others and love, and tune into whatever your specific issue is. Are you BPD? Are you a narcissist? Are you with a narcissist? Do you have low self-esteem? Can you only do codependent relationships? What does it mean to be a hungry ghost? But I would like you to make a wash, cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall. You can DM me for crypto links, for wire transfer, for the address to mail, cash in an envelope too, if you're that kind of bitch. And yeah, like I said earlier, washing is how you get back access to soul. It is how you become more human. And it is the process that I started doing just over 3 years ago. And I washed everything, and I continue to wash it all every day. But no matter what amount you wash, you do get something back, primarily in the untangible realm. What is that? I don't know. Why don't you motherfucking try it? Excuse my French. And see what happens. And I have a hunch that you might just be able to get off of this particularly antisocial platform and perhaps get some other information elsewhere if you take the plunge and do that. So that is part 1, and I will be back probably later this week to go into part 2, where I will talk about the term hungry ghost and what that means. So thank you for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.